Hey, what's up, awesome people? Super awesome to have you guys here. Welcome back to the channel. I'm T.Mayne, and we're going to be getting into some analysis today. What a special analysis we're going to be getting into today. You guys are super lucky to be here because we're not only going to go through analysis and basically prepare for the following week, but guys, I'm also going to keep this basically as value packed as possible. I'm going to go through the concepts that I use on a day in, day out basis that I've found to be helpful enough to at least, allow me to see that positive return, whether it's at the end of that month or at the end of that quarter or whenever, guys. So we're going to get into not only just the analysis, but the individual concepts as well, just as we're going through things. So, guys, we're going to get through, I'd say, 4 pairs today. We're going to do, we're going to go through AJ, so AUDJPY. We're going to go through Swiss yen. We're going to go through USDZAR, and we're going to go through gold. But we're going to just include the DXY on that list just because I guess it's okay to do some analysis on the DXY and get an understanding of where the dollar might be going in the course of next week, in the course of next month. Also because that just helps get an understanding of what's happening in the world of economics. What is the dollar doing? What is the head of all the other currencies doing? And we know that every other currency is basically exchanged against the dollar first before any other thing. So the movement of the dollar essentially affects all the other currencies. So it's just nice to have a look at where the dollar index is going in the course of next week. So guys, you're going to see some analysis on the charts already. This is just from our live session on Saturday. So I figured that it's going to save us a lot of time not to redraw all of the analysis on our charts and just basically explain everything that we went through on Saturday during the live session. So to speak about our major levels of structure that we've been pointing out for a while now, we have some monthly swing lows and swing highs there. Obviously these are the major levels if we're talking about those higher time frame swings. And then as well as, I guess, if we look at the most recent price action, we have a little trend going for ourselves over here. We do see the market putting in higher highs and higher lows. So clearly, I guess, a bullish trend going here on the DXY. And if we looking at things from a daily perspective, this trend that's going on, the previous higher lows that have held this structure or are continuing to hold this structure in an uptrend are these previous lows down here in these areas here. So these are important lows for us to be watching in the course of next week for any bullish momentum, because this uptrend is basically still intact as long as these previous higher lows have not been violated to the downside. So that's basically what we see from a daily perspective. Now let's drop down to the H4 and refine a bit of what we are looking at. Now on the H4 we get a little bit more context as to what price action is doing. We're looking at the nature of the price action and we can see a move to the upside with, I'd say, a lot more green candles than there are red candles. But if you look at what's happening on the left hand side, we can see that there's a lot more green candles in this move to the downside than there were red candles in this move to the upside. So there's a lot more choppy price action actually as markets are making this move to the downside on the right hand side there. So we basically looked at this H4 structure from these structural lows there. We have highs, we have higher lows, we have higher highs, we have higher lows, and we have highs over there. So we looked at these areas here as being our basically H4 structure that was holding this uptrend here that was violated to the downside, obviously the beginning of this corrective structure here. So we took into account these lows there. We took into account, well, the most recent price action. So we kind of refined our trend line to these lows down here. And what we can see is that there is the potential for this market to actually give us a 3-touch structure on the way to the downside. Let's just get that drawing tool one more time. So we do have our second touch over there. There is the potential for us to drop below, give us that third touch before we actually see some sort of reversal structure for any bullish continuation from the DXY. So this is a setup, guys, that we're going to be looking at, considering that H4 daily structure is still held bullish by these previous support structures here, and price could remain bullish above these support structures. And also looking at the nature of price action, we do see some sort of a correction into this important or at least significant support area. So guys, in the course of next week, we're going to be looking for some potential bullish price action on the DXY, hoping to see prices break higher. We've also refined our trend lines down to the H1 chart, and we kind of identified this smaller 3-touch structure over here, or this descending structure, and we basically looked at that because we wanted to refine our entry and actually get in as buyers as low as possible. So instead of us waiting for those reduced risk entries to come after we violate this trend line and then bounce off to the top, we are also going to be looking for a violation of this smaller trend line and retest of this smaller trend line to get in as low as we can, or as close as to support as we can get into. Why do we want to get in at support? Because we'll have a good risk to reward ratio, some opportunities to actually manage our trade or manage our bias in a way that's going to be beneficial to us long term. So these are the areas that we would first have to manage this bias, and then these are the ultimate areas that we would have to manage this bias if we were bullish. But if we got that late entry from these areas here, we'd have to manage our bias still at these areas here. Do you see that doesn't give us a lot of room to kind of be able to really maximize on a bias in a direction? So we want to get in as low as possible, and we're basically going to be looking at this trend line here to manage our trend. And obviously if we do break above this trend line, then we are going to assume that things could turn into a bullish bias market. So that's our analysis for the DXY. All we are looking for is some potential bullish continuation. Let's go down onto the next pair. So the next pair that we're going to have a look at, guys, is AUDJPY. Now let's go up to the daily. So on the daily, guys, AUDJPY, what I do want to point out first of all is that prices are sort of within a range, a higher time frame range. If we look at the swing lows, so we have swing lows down there, coming up to there, coming down to there, we have higher highs, we have higher lows. But if you look at what's happening now most recently, we see some sort of a squeeze. We see lower lows, lower highs, and now we see higher lows. So we do see structure kind of squeezing now, creating smaller structure within larger structures. So we're refining what we're looking at because we understand that we are trading within a range. We know the probabilities of trading within a range, but we're going to refine what we're looking at because we are day traders. We still want to be able to capitalize on those moves that happen intraday, as much as we know where our higher time frame probabilities will come in. I'd still want to try and capitalize on something that might happen within these areas over here. So taking all of that into account, we do have a nice ascending structure, nice 3-touch structure that we've drawn. First touch over there, second touch over here, and we are expecting some sort of a third touch potentially somewhere in those regions there. Now what we also have to go with the confluence of us being sell bias is that we do see all of this momentum on our left hand side, and we can see from this momentum here that did violate levels of structure, a lot of levels of structure to the downside, showing a lot of beautiful momentum. Straight after that, we see prices going into some sort of a consolidation where we are basically making higher lows or showing signs of being in an uptrend, but prices are taking a lot longer to move to the upside than they have taken to move to the downside. So clearly the momentum is to the downside, and we want to be trading in the direction of that higher time frame momentum. So all we're going to be waiting for is for prices to pull into our point of interest, our value area, an area where we're going to expect some sort of a reversal structure. So once prices break above these previous highs, maybe give us a touch of the resistance area over there, then we will be looking for some potential pushes to the downside, and then continuation structures that will give us an opportunity to at least capitalize on this move to the downside. Now for targets, the first areas that we're going to want to look at for this trade are obviously the 90% rule of the structure, or where the corrective structure started from. We want to be looking at these areas as major support areas where maybe we want to manage our full position if we do get a beautiful risk to reward within this gap over here. Otherwise, we're going to look to manage our position, at least if we can maximize on this momentum that might come in on the right hand side. We do want to actually look to take ultimate targets at these support structures over there. Yeah, I guess just because we want to maximize on those wins as long as we can. And there's probably, if we do take our fib from these lows here to these highs here, we'll probably find out that this is one of the extension areas as well, and as well as it is previous structure where I saw a lot of buying momentum coming out of. So I know there's probably some orders or something sitting in these areas here. We do see sellers trying to push the market to the downside, but not being able to push prices lower than the area where we see buyers coming in from here on our left hand side. So I know that this is a very significant area, and if prices do want to push lower, this is definitely a place where prices will at least stall, maybe give us a correction or something of that nature. So the trade that I'm looking to get involved in is obviously from these areas here. I'm looking to sell into the momentum to these support structures over there. So that's my bias on AUDJPY. I'm going to be looking to get into that higher time frame momentum to the downside. Let's go on to the next pair. So next we're going to look at Swiss yen. We'll go up to the daily. So guys, on the daily, what we can see here is obviously a market that is in a sell sensitive area, or has been in an area where we consider to be sell sensitive. Okay, the structure to my left took long to load, but anyway, if we look to our left, we can see a lot of weak rejections from these areas over here. And most recently, we also expected some sort of a head and shoulder structure to form out of this market. Now on the daily, we still have not really tapped into these previous highs here, maybe to give us a larger time frame double top structure. Though what we can see, if we do refine what we're looking at and we drop down to those lower time frames, understanding that we are approaching a daily resistance, a weekly resistance, as well as we are within a sell sensitive area that we've seen the market test a couple of times in the past, we want to be looking for those sell biased setups. So looking at price action basically on the H4, what we can see, if we just slap a trend line on here, this was the trend that was established. We see markets correcting to the upside, and this trend basically has been violated to the downside. Now, once we see prices breaking out of structure, if prices break back within structure, then we immediately assume that something larger and something more complex is happening in this area here. Otherwise, if prices are able to remain below the trend that has been established over there, and we do see reversal structures forming in these areas, then I will be more than happy to get into a sell, because we are at some higher time frame resistance. We have seen prices correcting to the upside, and we do see already some small distributions in those areas here, sending prices lower, at least showing us some signs of weakness, because prices have been able to violate previous lower structures that were formed. We did see some support obviously in these areas here, and that is an area that I'm going to be looking at in the course of next week, obviously, to manage my trade. If I do manage to find an entry up top, I at least want to be break even by the time prices get to these support areas here, because this is an area that if price wants to hold a bullish trend, this is an area where prices can hold that bullish trend. So I want to be able to manage my position by the time I get in, by the time prices actually push to the downside. So what I will be looking for in the course of next week is some sort of a reversal structure. Whether we push higher, I'm going to be looking for a potential ending structure. If prices stall, I'm going to be looking for a potential reversal structure. Or if prices push to the downside, I'm going to be looking for some sort of a correction that will give me a sell biased entry. I understand that I am at resistance, and it makes more sense to be making or to be looking for sell biased positions. So that's basically what I'm going to go into next week. CHFJPY, guys, I am going to be looking for some sell bias setups. Let's go into the next pair. The next pair that we're going to have a look at is USDZAR. So on USDZAR, guys, we'll go up to a daily. So I do have a marking here. Let's just delete that. That's probably there from yesterday. Though what I can say about USDZAR, guys, is so we have been pushing down from a weekly perspective. Let's just start looking at structure. These are our major swing areas. What we can see already is prices creating lows, obviously taking those lows out there. We do see prices establishing highs. We see prices establishing equal highs, or at least highs with some liquidity above these highs over there. We do see new lows being created and being taken out by this move to the downside over there. But if we can look at what's happening, I guess we can even slap on a trend line, I guess from these areas here on a daily, just slap on a trend line, and what we can see is prices basically breaking out of the trend line. And we really honestly didn't even need to slap this trend line on to see this, because we would have went down to those lower time frames and actually seen what's happening here. But anyway, we have prices breaking out of this structure and breaking and closing back within the structure. So immediately we assume that something more complex is going on in these areas. If we do see that beautiful V rejection to the upside, then we're obviously going to look for some corrective structures. But anyway, guys, we're on the daily. Let's not go that deep into what we're looking at, because whatever we assume on the daily is probably going to take a long time to mature. So let's go down onto the H4, refine what we're looking at on USDZAR. So on USDZAR, guys, we basically have this corrective structure to the downside. We do see some nice impulsive price action from these areas up here, pushing to the upside. If we measure the time that it took for the market to make this move to the upside, and we measure the amount of time the market took to actually get to these structural lows here, you guys can see that the market took a lot more time to move down than it did take to move to the upside. So clearly shows us that there is momentum to the upside. As much as prices are violating lower structure and creating lower structure, maybe prices are just generating liquidity for that next move to the upside. So that's what I've got in mind. I also did kind of refine some higher time frame structure. Sorry, I didn't speak about that. Let's just jump back up to the daily and just look at this. We do see that on the left hand side, guys, there is this nice impulsive move over here, and we obviously spoke about this yesterday with the guys in the live session, that this would be considered the last sell to buy candlestick over there. Obviously, we spoke about that there was obviously some equal lows over here. So anyone that assumed that this was an impulse correction and potential impulse to the upside, there was some liquidity that rested below here that prices did grab and then just continue the move to the upside. So this was obviously a fake out to the downside, collecting the last or at least stopping out the early buyers, collecting the last bit of sellers that they could have been in this market, hoping for breaks of structure to the downside before actually using that liquidity to make that move to the upside. So something fishy did happen here, and obviously this would be considered our last order block in this move over here. So if prices are to hold and keep, or are to move to the upside, this would be the last area that they would test before they make that move to the upside. So this is an area that I'm looking at, expecting basically some buyers to come in at these levels here, or for this to at least be a buy sensitive area where some buyers will see prices attractive and probably want to buy. So I have used that to kind of also refine my trend line. We can see that we can have this potential 3-touch structure. First touch over there, second touch over here, and we could potentially see a third touch somewhere in these areas here. And obviously if prices do give us that third touch in these areas here, that will also be the area which we assumed would be a buy sensitive area where potential buyers could be interested in sending prices higher. So we will have some probabilities in actually looking for a buy setup. So what I am going to be waiting for obviously is for prices to give me that reversal structure. Let's just do this. Prices are, or at least I'm going to wait for prices to give me that reversal structure. Whether it comes in the form of an inverse, I have no idea what it's going to come in the form of. It might be something complex where we see some equal lows being taken out, highs being taken out, something like this happening, and then the move to the upside. We don't know. I would love for something like this to happen, because this would be a beautiful entry. Nonetheless, guys, I am going to be looking for prices to basically show me some bullish price action, because of all of the confluences that we've drawn from our higher time frames all the way to those lower time frames. Now I'm gonna do the last pair. We'll get into the last pair now. Let's get into gold. Okay, let's just jump back on that daily. Now, I don't think gold has an opportunity for us like immediately, though I really wanted to actually have a look at gold because I feel like gold has a lot to teach us in terms of patience and waiting for a setup that has the probabilities that we're waiting for a certain move. Now, I guess let's just get straight into gold. So what we can see from a structural perspective is obviously swing lows, swing highs, prices breaking below these swing lows, obviously creating lower swing lows. Those swing lows obviously becoming equal lows, prices breaking above structure, and now most recently I guess prices able to close above these previous closes over here, so prices could be bullish. Also, if you look at what happened here from a daily perspective, we do see prices violating higher structure to the upside after creating some equal lows, so a clear sign of sellers being in control, buyers stepping in for whatever reason, sellers pushing prices down but not being able to close prices lower than they were previously able to send prices. So buyers obviously showing that no, things have probably changed. They're able to violate previous structure over here that sellers would have had to hold if they were to send prices to the downside. So there is a clear indication that buyers are stepping into this market. But if you go down to an H4, we just want to refine what we're looking at. What we did obviously realize or notice, take note of, is our major swing areas. These are both our daily swings and as well as the H4 structure over here that is holding this current trend to the upside over there. So prices will remain bullish as long as they are above these areas over here. So what does that mean for us that are looking to buy or to sell gold? That means that next week, more than ever, you have to be reactive to the price action, because if you look at where price is, remember, we're looking at the extremes. So the probabilities that will come in for you if you want to be a seller, the best probabilities will come in at these next resistance areas. Why not these? Because prices have not shown what's going on in this area. They are still within the area where they could show some sensitivity from. So if you wanted to be a seller, really the appropriate area to sell would be there. If you wanted to be a buyer, honestly, the most appropriate area to be a buyer would be somewhere in these areas here. So we know that our probability will really only come into us at these extremes over here. But we're day traders or we're swing traders, and we still want to be able to make that next trading opportunity. So we're going to refine what we're looking at, and we're going to speak about what we could be expecting the dollar to do if we want to be either a buyer or if we want to be a seller. Now, I'm going to tell you which side I'm going to lean on a little bit more. Though I guess the way gold is now, if anyone is holding a strong enough bias that they won't be able to follow price action, yeah, they're just in for something. I don't think anyone could hold a strong bias considering where gold is right now, and we would have to see some extra price action, something extra, for us to be able to really make a decision worth putting money on the line for. Now, previous structure on the H4 holds as such, so obviously we could be expecting some retest of previous resistance that was violated to the upside. So if prices correct down into these areas here, if you want to be looking for a buy, you could be looking for a buy from these areas here. Otherwise, if you want to really have those buying probabilities on your side, then you might want to wait for prices to really correct down into some previous support over there, or maybe even into some previous structure that is lower than this structure over here. Why not that structure? That structure is just way too obvious. How many people are probably gonna buy from here? So maybe the market might just do something like that before actually moving to the upside. So I kind of don't always want to involve myself in the first buy setup that comes along, because that's probably the one that gets taken out, and then the next buy setup is probably the one that really does follow through with the move. So I kind of want to maybe look for something like that if I want to be a buyer. Otherwise, guys, if you want to be a seller, then you have to be waiting for some type of a reversal structure. Whether that reversal structure takes long to play out, like a long-term head and shoulder structure, or if that reversal structure is a structure, let me just try and delete this quickly, or if that reversal structure is a structure that forms straight off the top where we are right now. If I do see some sell bias structure, then I might be looking to become a seller of gold. Why would I be interested in being a seller on gold? Because if we look at what the structure has been doing in terms of like the long-term momentum really has been to the downside. So we could just be seeing a larger corrective structure into previous resistance, where the selling probability we did say might come in just for a move to the downside. So we have no idea what's going on. We just want to make the next trading opportunity, the next trading decision, but we do understand that our probabilities will really only come into play at these extremes that we do see here, where we are right now, slap bang in the middle. And now we know what we should be waiting to see price action do if we want to be a buyer, considering where price is now, and if we want to be a seller, then we should know what we should be waiting for price to do for us to be able to be a seller. Now guys, I hope you actually enjoyed the analysis. Thank you guys for watching till the end. Now I do want to say that I would love to see what you guys want me to analyze further. I do want to start incorporating pairs that are not on my watch list, but that a lot of you guys are looking at, because we want to keep this content also as valuable as possible. And if value means me changing and doing something outside of what I'm used to, what I normally do, then that's okay with me. Let's get the value going, guys. So do comment below what pairs you would like me to get into next week, and I'll obviously take the most requested pair to get into. And then aside from that, guys, this is the end of the video. If you have received some sort of value, whether it's in terms of the way you understand the market, the way you look at the market, or just for next week, now you know which direction you're going to look to have a bias in next week, definitely do drop this video a like. It will mean a lot to me. It's going to show me that I am actually giving you guys value that is, or at least that you guys are interpreting as the value that I'm assuming that I'm producing. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching until the end. I will see you guys in all the future videos. Enjoy the rest of your guys' trading week and be profitable.